Hello, everyone on ADC Sports Dallas. Thank you for joining me this Thursday night to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. I hope you're having a great week. Hope you're ready for the weekend. It's a big weekend, by the way, for sports fans because it's the NFL's preseason finale, but it's also the start of college football. So if you like the NFL, I'm pretty sure most of you like college football as well. And we're getting ready for what we like to call week 0 on Saturday. So I'm very excited about this weekend. I'm excited to talk to you about the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, Dak Prescott's throwing session, playing 11 on 11. He's basically back. The chains are off. We'll get into that on tonight's show. We'll talk about Ricky Dowdle's unfortunate injury and what's going to happen at running back, who's going to be the third running back, if at all. And we'll talk a little bit about Greg Sarland and some players to watch as well versus the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. Because, as I said, this is the last preseason game. We're used to 4 weeks of the preseason plus the Hall of Fame game. And now the Cowboys did have the chance to play your regular 4 preseason games, but it still feels a little bit weird that, NFL teams are just playing 3 preseason games. And a lot of NFL teams are being very conservative about who they play and who they don't play. Sean McVay was very direct in an interview, and he said, you will never see me play Matthew Stafford unless the NFL is going to promise us that we will get games back if we lose any player. And I thought that was very interesting to hear Sean McVay be that direct in that conversation. So thank you all for joining me. Thank you, Stevie Mack. Listen to Stevie Mack as always. Please click that like button and share the video if you're watching right now. Also, Asmodeus, what's up? Dallas John, what's up? Craig English, look who's here. We have Mike Crum in the building, and Mike Crum does not miss a single ADC Sports Primetime show, but he watches them the morning after. So I usually wake up and I have a Mike Crum tweet waiting for me. So Mike, I really appreciate you, bro, and it's great to have you live here in the building. Dallas Junk saying, let's go, Dak is unleashed. It looks like that. We'll get into that. Also, shout out to the YouTube crowd. Yeah, Sean Hawkins here in the show watching ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I appreciate you and thank you for tuning in. Thank you for choosing to listen to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. And before we kick the show off officially, let me ask you a favor. Share the show. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, remember to follow ADC at ADC Dallas on Twitter. Please retweet, share the show, tell your friends about it. Let your friends know that you're watching ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. And now that more of us are here, we can start it off officially. Welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday night here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network, with a lot more content coming your way for the Cowboys 2021 season. And man, is it close. Head over to adcsports.com/Dallas. So remember that there's a new site up. You can now check out adcsports.com for your Dallas Cowboys needs and, of course, Dallas Mavericks needs. But you will also find some Tennessee tight ends, some Nashville content, some Kansas City content. But if you want to skip all of that, just go to adcsports.com/Dallas. We are excited about what's to come. Of course, you're already enjoying the shows 3 days per week, Sky shows in the mornings, my shows at night. So I'm really excited to share with you what we're all about on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. And as Jackie is saying, it's very impressive that this is true. The kickoff is only 14 days away. How exciting is that? And it's really great that Dallas Cowboys are going to be playing the Super Bowl champs, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And by the way, I was going to save this for later. I'm also looking forward to the running back tree discussion because I have some thoughts there. And you might, some people might like it, some people might not like them. But yeah, I was going to save this for later. But since Jackie Smith in the chat already mentioned the NFL kickoff, I will get into it right away. I appreciate John Fassel for a lot of reasons, but this is not one of them. John Fassel said, speaking about Greg Sarland getting back from back surgery, and speaking about his rehab, and he said the first time he hit a ball, we deflated the ball to about 11 PSI. probably pretty similar to, well, I won't go there, but we deflated the ball. Like, John, Tom Brady does not need any Tom Brady does not need any further motivation. Just let him be and do not piss him off further as we get closer to the NFL kickoff. We do not need to face a pissed off Tom Brady. So if John Fassel just avoids those comments, I think we should be great. Bones is the GOAT, says Dallas Junk. He really is, man. That was very funny, and I'm just kidding around here. But yeah, I saw that, and the first thing I thought about was, man, I hope Tom Brady does not see this at all, because he will take it out on the Cowboys. He's like Michael Jordan on The Last Dance saying, and I took that personally. That's how I envision Tom Brady's mindset constantly working. Well, for those of you who missed it, Dak Prescott was back in competitive training, and that's what they call 7-on-7, 11-on-11. And Mike McCarthy had, before practice, had mentioned on Wednesday that Dak Prescott was going to take part on 7-on-7. Well, we were surprised. We were greatly surprised when Dak Prescott actually was involved in 11-on-11 training, and that was very great. He actually had about 18 snaps. He passed the ball 12 times, completed 11 of those 12 passes, and then he had these big completions, long completions, 30 yards pass to Blake Jarwin, for example. And Dak Prescott, I don't know if you guys saw the clips, and there were very few clips out there on social media, but Dak Prescott was looking sharp. He was looking like he had that zip on the ball. These were not soft tosses at all. Plus, you're dealing with the pressure from the defensive front, even if you know that they're not going to actually hit you. Dak Prescott had those mental reps, and I believe that when we talk about Dak Prescott's rehab, you're not only talking about the physical side of things, but the mental side of things. Have you seen the reports out of Cincinnati? And I think Joe Burrow has improved already, but there were some reports over there talking about Joe Burrow seeing ghosts in training camp. And, you assume that Dak Prescott is not going to be in that situation given his experience in the NFL, but you never know with this kind of injuries and being away for so long. So that's what I'm the most excited about, Dak Prescott being back in practice. And I loved it when Mike McCarthy called Dak a caged lion, because I think that is exactly what we've seen in Hard Knocks from Dak Prescott, especially in that first episode when he was involved in the practices. We were seeing a caged lion wanting to get all of the snaps. And we will get into those running back and that fullback discussion in just a bit. James saying, I'm sorry, but so far Mike McCarthy has not been a good coach for us. I get that frustration, and I definitely think that we still don't know what Mike McCarthy is going to mean for the Dallas Cowboys. But it's too soon for me to give you any hard opinion on Mike McCarthy. I just cannot do it yet. There were some things I did not like, though, from the first year. Despite the injuries, despite everything, I did not like some of the play calling. Well, not play calling, decision making, because play calling was from Kellen Moore, of course, and I did not like everything about the play calling, especially after Dak Prescott's injury. But if there's one thing that annoyed me the most about Mike McCarthy, is that he entered the Dallas Cowboys talking about analytics and talking about this and that. However, we're not watching. We did not see the decision-making back up that analytics suck. So there was a question, when did they say no more pitch count? No one said that, says Kenny Stanley. Actually, yes, Kellen Moore did, and that's what we're talking about here. That's what I'm the most excited about, and what we wanted to share with you here on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. And remember, we will never clickbait you. So if that's the suspicion that you had, please don't worry about that, because we would never clickbait you. So according to Michael Gelkin from the Dallas Morning News and various reporters, Kellen Moore said on today's presser that Dak Prescott was looking great and that he was no longer on a pitch count. So that is one of the biggest news regarding Dak Prescott. And he said, and I quote, "We're just playing ball at this point." And it's great to hear that from Kellen Moore. And it's great to listen to the fact that the Dallas Cowboys are giving Dak Prescott 100% participation in that practice field because he definitely needs that. Okay, didn't hear that yet, just got off work. Well, it happened this morning, so don't worry. We have you covered here on adcsportsdallas.com. Over here we have today, Kellen Moore said it, and Mike Fisher reported it on it also. Yes, this happened, and that is, forget about Dak Prescott being on 11 on 11. I think that the thing that we should be the most excited about is the fact that Dak Prescott is no longer on a pitch count. That means a lot for the Dallas Cowboys quarterback. And of course, we're not going to expect Dak to play versus the Jaguars. He's not going to. The Cowboys have told us he's not already. However, Kellen Moore was asked on today's presser, was he concerned at all about the time aspect of things? About the fact that the NFL kickoff is only 14 days away, September 9th versus the Tampa Bay Bucs. And Kellen Moore said, well, we have time to get Dak Prescott back in track. And I do believe they have. And I do believe that the fact of the matter is the Cowboys have just been being very cautious about this whole thing. There have been two sides to this story. One side has told us to worry, to panic about Dak Prescott's health. There are posts out there saying that Dak was not going to be back during the season. And I just quoted that tweet, by the way, on my Twitter account at MauNFL, M-A-U-N-F-L, from The Score. And The Score put out a tweet 5 days ago in which they did not only take Adam Schefter's comments very seriously, which we discussed here on the show as well, but they actually misunderstood what Adam Schefter was trying to say. Adam Schefter never said that Dak Prescott was not going to be back all season. He was saying that he was not going to be 100%. And he might be wrong, but the Score took that and got it even more wrong and said that Dak was not going to be back the entire season. And that tweet is still up from 5 days ago. So what are we doing here, national media? What are we doing regarding the Cowboys and the Dak Prescott coverage? That's one side of the story. The other side of the story is telling us, and has been telling us for months and months now, that Dak Prescott is fine, that Dak is actually just being very cautious about his rehab process and things like that. And the difference between these two sides is one is providing us with actual evidence. Like, for example, being involved in 11 on 11, throwing 52 passes before the Houston Texans game, and things like that. The Cowboys have been telling us that, but at the same time, they have been backing it up with evidence. So I'm not really worried about Dak Prescott. Is it ideal that he's going to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with no preseason action? No, it is far from ideal. But at the end of the day, if you put things, if you try to weigh the pros and cons, I think the Cowboys have made the right decision. We have some comments here on the show. McCarthy hasn't had a training camp yet, says William, or preseason. So really, it's his first year. That's the way I look at it. Mike Crum says, or yesterday, I don't sleep. And I think he means when he wakes up early for a Sky show. Cut Ben DiNucci, I mean, good God, I'd rather have you Marcus Russell, and that's saying something. And I don't expect DiNucci to be with the Cowboys after your final cut-down day. But it does make sense for the Cowboys to keep him around before, well, what was supposed to be Tuesday's cut-down day, which ended up being way different because of the COVID cases within the Dallas Cowboys. I hope Rush will start versus Jack, says Dallas Junk. And we talked about that on Tuesday. The Cowboys said, at least Mike McCarthy said, that that's the plan. And he said that Cooper Rush deserves the opportunity to start versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. And some have reported that in practice, he's gotten the starting reps over Garrett Gilbert. So that will be very exciting to watch versus the Jacksonville Jaguars in a game in which we should not expect a lot of starters, at least from the offensive side of the ball, after what was basically the dress rehearsal for the Cowboys on week 2. After the ankle injury, I think it's smart not to push the shoulder, says Todd. I think it is too. And there was that nugget from the Hard Knocks first episode in which they mentioned the fact that they had talked to the Texas Rangers, because that shoulder strain thing is very common for MLB pitchers. And they were told, you know what, just rest him as much as you can. And that's what the Cowboys have done so far. Uh, Over here, we had some other comments. So we have some strong feelings in the chat tonight. And I understand that we're getting closer to the regular season. But moving on to the next topic, and I know a lot of people want to talk about this. Rico Dowdle was placed on injured reserve, running back. And that's unfortunate for the Dallas Cowboys. Rico Dowdle had already positioned himself as the favorite to become the Cowboys running back 3. He was looking like a virtual lock for the Cowboys 53-man roster. And unfortunately, now he's placed on injured reserve. He's not eligible to come back during the entire 2021 season. He will have to wait until 2022 to be back in the competition. And this brings up a very interesting question for the Dallas Cowboys. Who is your running back 3 now? Because you have Jaquan Hardy, you have Brendan Knox, but these two guys have not really shown up as standout players during training camp so far. Can it change? Of course it can, and these two guys can go and have a strong performance versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, but they do not look right now like your strong prospects to make the 53-man roster. It would be a big surprise for everybody. And then you have various possibilities here, in my opinion. Number one, and I think that this is unlikely, Jaquan Hardy and Knox can end up as your running back 3. I really doubt that happens. Then you have your second possibility, which is a fullback making the 53-man roster instead of a third running back. And I know a lot of people will mention Nick Ralston, and we already have a couple of comments, if I'm not mistaken, signaling out Nick Ralston, because Shewo Olonilua is out for the season as well. He was placed on injured reserve before the first cut down date. So that could be it. The Cowboys could have a fullback on their team, and Ralston has done a good job for the Cowboys so far in the preseason, and he was looking like a 53-man roster candidate already. And then you have the possibility of looking on the outside. So Stevie Mack, for example, says, I say signs Peyton Barber if he gets cut by the Washington football team. And that's a strong possibility as well. So that could be one of the most likely scenarios for the Dallas Cowboys. The fact that we could have an outside running back. But there's also another strong possibility. And in my opinion, this would be very smart from the Dallas Cowboys. And I don't know if people are going to agree with this or not. Like, I really do not know. But I say, and I've seen some comments here already. Kenny said it, and someone else said it, but I missed who it was. Mike Crum was. No running back 3. That's what I'm saying. And that's actually my first question from me to you. Do you agree or disagree that the Cowboys should consider carrying just 2 running backs for the 2021 season? And I don't mean 2 running backs plus a safety. I mean just 2 running backs. And here's why I think, and then let me show you some numbers that I had already mentioned in the show at some point, but I had not pulled them up. I had not pulled this tweet up. And this tweet is from June by Adam Koffler. And these are Ezekiel Elliott's snap percentages by week last season. And you can see the difference between the first 5 weeks and the final weeks after Dak Prescott's injury. Before Dak Prescott's injury, Ezekiel Elliott was playing over 80% of the offensive snaps per week. Could that number change because of Tony Pollard? Maybe, but I think that as we get into the regular season, the Cowboys are going to lean towards keeping up the workload for Ezekiel Elliott, the heavy workload. And I think that the Cowboys should be really interested in just keeping 2 running backs. If you suffer from an injury, I'm sure you can sneak any other running back to your practice squad, including someone like Jaquan Hardy or Brendan Knox, or if you want to sign someone else from after waivers, after cut down day in the NFL. But I do not think that you need a safety. I don't think that you need a third tailback at fullback, excuse me. I said safety. I wanted to say fullback, excuse me. I don't think you need a fullback. So I took a look at I took a look at the Cowboys 2020 snap counts. Rico Dowdle played 13 snaps on offense all season. That's good for 1.13% of the Cowboys offensive snaps. And if you were wondering if fullbacks had any significant playing time for the Dallas Cowboys in 2020, and we're talking about offense specifically, no, Shaywo had 0 snaps on special teams. So here's the thing. You are watching a running back duo between Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard that can clearly keep up with the demand that the offensive coordinator is going to put on them. Like, Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard can do the offensive work without any single problem. To me, the question about carrying a third running back becomes a matter of, is there anyone else on the roster that can do those special teams assignments? Can you make up for carrying only 2 running backs with another wide receiver as far as special teams we're talking about? Shaywo did not who opted out? It was Jamis Olawale who opted out last season. And that's regarding a comment here that I got on Facebook. Todd Cook said he opted out last year. That was Jamis. Shaywo did play on special teams for the Dallas Cowboys and on offense, but only 13 snaps for the Dallas Cowboys on offense. So I think it's a matter of, I'm worried about not carrying a running back tree because of special teams, not because of the offense. Special teams would be what worry me. But I think that the Cowboys can figure out a way to make up for that, at wide receiver or at cornerback or at safety or at linebacker. Well, linebacker is going to be tough. But we have talked on the show that about the Cowboys struggling to keep 12 defensive backs on the Dallas Cowboys if you want to keep Israel Mukuamu, for example, because you're probably going to have to go long at cornerback. You're probably going to have to carry 7 cornerbacks. And if you want to keep Mukuamu, you're probably going to need to keep 5 safeties, because the Cowboys, it's looking very unlikely for the Cowboys to get rid of Jaron Kears. And you have Hooker, DeMonte Cassie, Donovan Wilson, and Mukuamu. You probably need to have 5 safeties there. So you're probably going to have 12 defensive backs. You're going to want to go long at the defensive line as well. So you need these roster spots. And I think that the Cowboys' best decision would be to just keep 2 running backs and forget about a fullback. I want the fullback, says William, on the team. He's a monster. And I think he's referring to Nick Ralston. And I like Ralston as well. But if I'm looking at the 53-man roster, it's tough for me to justify the spot for him. And by the way, after the Jacksonville Jaguars game, we'll have my final 53-man roster projection on the show, and we will discuss it on Tuesday after the next week's Tuesday, excuse me. Maurice Kennedy also opted out. That's right, Maurice Kennedy opted out, and many of us had written Kennedy off before the 2021 season. You can use one of the tight ends as fullback, who's probably going to be your number 3 tight end, is probably going to be Jeremy Sprinkle after Sean McKeon's injury. Trade Anthony Brown and cut Darian Thompson, says Kenny. And I know that a lot of people want to get rid of Anthony Brown, but I really do not think that the Cowboys are going to go down that road. Thank you, Alfred, for being here on the show as well, saying what kind of first Cowboys is this? And for context to you all, I have a show in Spanish that is called Primero Cowboys, which translates to First Cowboys or Cowboys First. It's a bad idea for Dak. First test is in game time, says Justin in the chat. And as I said, I understand that concern, but I do think that the Cowboys are being smart about it, as smart as they can. We have some more comments here in the chat. Kennedy should be starter, but the coaches suck. What are they thinking? I think Maurice Kennedy is going to have a lot of playing time, and he might be competing for that starting role. I agree with that. Good evening, David, and thank you for joining the show. Thank you for joining ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. So that's what I think is going to end up happening with the Dallas Cowboys in 2021. I think that we're going to see the Cowboys be conservative at running back and just carry Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. And I think it will be smart for the Cowboys when we take a look at the entire roster and going long at other positions. Yeah, we could definitely use Kennedy. We could definitely use Kennedy last year, says Dallas Young. Definitely. There's no doubt about it. And by the way, speaking of all these Cowboys roster moves and things like that, Rex Sorline is coming back. Rex Sorline is coming back to the shout-out Mike Crum, who who was making a little bit of fun in a healthy way. In a healthy way, Mike. Don't worry about how I pronounced Greg Sörlein the other day. I was laughing out loud at that tweet. But anyways, Legatron. We're going to call him Legatron from now on. He's back. Greg is back with the Dallas Cowboys. They already got rid of Lirim Hajrullahu. We talked about this on Tuesday. He was waived on Tuesday, and now the Dallas Cowboys are going to get their veteran kicker back. And Kenny's saying Sörlein didn't look too good. And it was not the perfect year for Greg. I agree, especially when we're talking about the long field goals. He went 3 for 9, if I'm not mistaken. 3 for 9 in field goals over 50 yards. But in those kicks between 20 and 49 yards, which in my opinion are the most important ones, because over 50 yards, you're flipping the coin. And I'm of the opinion that unless you're in a game-end situation, end-game situation, you're better off just going for it in attempts of over 50 yards. That's where I'm at right now in football philosophy when taking into account what we've learned from NFL analytics. So I do not mind about the 50-plus field goal attempts. However, between 20 and 49, he missed only one kick, so I like that about Greg. Yeah, that sense of security. Overall, 34 for 41 for an 83% efficiency rate. So in practice yesterday, not last year. Oh, says Kenny. Oh, thank you, Kenny, for the clarification. I was kind of confused there. But yeah, he has not looked great. But I mean, he's still getting in that rehab process. And we were actually mentioning this comment from John Fassel earlier on the show. And I was mentioning it just as a joke as to what he meant about Tom Brady. But it also helps us get some insight as to how the rehab works for the kicker. So John Fassel was talking about how he was kicking deflated balls as he was trying to get into a rehab mode. So maybe it's just a matter of time between Greg is back on track. So that's maybe I'm being optimistic, but I will not make too much about what we saw yesterday in practice. 20 to 49, says Mike, are the main kicks you need to hit. And I agree. And in those, Greg only missed one attempt in 2020. So I'm excited about him being back, of course. And it will be big for the Dallas Cowboys special teams. And thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Greg was coming back from injury last year, says Todd Cook. Greg was coming back from, he played, but he was coming back from his worst year in the NFL. And he bounced back all right, but he was playing hurt in 2019. He was. So maybe it wasn't as serious as it is right now, but he was dealing with something, though. So before I leave you, and Jesse is here, is right here in the chat, Greg will be playing versus the Jacks. Yes, he will. He was already activated from PUP after the move from the Cowboys to waive Lirim Hajrullahu. We all kind of knew what was going to happen, and now it's official. Greg Sörlein has been activated from PUP, and he will be playing versus the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. By the way, at 12 p.m. Central Time. So if you have not put that alarm clock, make sure you do so, because if you're like me, otherwise you will wake up late on Sunday. We dealt with Brett Maher, so we will be all right with Greg the Let, says Chris, and thank you for joining the show as well, Chris. I agree. I thought Brian Anger looked solid against the Texans, says Dallas Junk, and I can't help feel good about that, because I was not a fan of the Brian Anger move, only because I was probably just a little bit biased toward Hunter. I wanted Hunter Nicewander to have a good year with the Dallas Cowboys, and when Brian Anger was brought in and he was named the favorite to start, I did not like the idea a lot, right? Like, I wanted to see Hunter, the young Hunter, have a better job, right? So anyways, we will get, before I leave you tonight on the show, we will get into the players to watch that I have for the game versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. But before I do that, let me ask you a question, and it's a similar question. Who's your player to watch in this preseason finale versus the Jacksonville Jaguars? Who is the one player that you want to watch versus Jacksonville? And there's a lot of players that I would like to mention, but I will only say 4. And I'm kind of cheating here because one of them is Greg the Leg. I want to figure out how Greg is going to look in the regular season, maybe we'll get a better idea. Kenny had mentioned the fact that Greg did not look great yesterday, so maybe he just tries to, clear a little bit of our doubts tomorrow, this weekend versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. But also, those rookie cornerbacks, I want to watch them both. They will be very important, in my opinion, for the Cowboys' success late in the season, because you cannot help but think that the Cowboys are going to suffer some injuries at some point during the season, because that's how the NFL works. And the moment one of the veterans gets injured, this rookie's importance is going to go way up. And I want to take one final look before the regular season begins on Nahshon Wright, on Kelvin Joseph. Kelvin Joseph has had his bad moments, but I think he still has a lot of potential to be a starter for the Cowboys at some point in 2021. I will be surprised at this point, though, if he's your starter week 1, though. We had talked about this throughout the entire offseason, and I think that now it's very clear that he's not going to be starting over maybe Anthony Brown or Maurice Kennedy or whoever you want it to be. I really doubt number 24 is going to be starting. Now, Wright has looked great, and he has looked – what I've liked about Wright is that he has used his length. He was drafted because of his length first and foremost, and his scheme fit due to that length with Dan Quinn, and he's been able to use that at every single level of the routes. And I have liked that about Nahshon Wright a lot. So Matt Farniok, I want to watch Matt Farniok as well. I think he's still fighting for that 53-man roster spot. Players like Mukwamu, players like Farniok, maybe Josh Ball, but I do think that Josh Ball makes the team only to be placed on injured reserve. But I think that Matt Farniok is still fighting for that spot. And versus the Texans, he played 34 snaps, and according to Pro Football Focus, and he allowed zero pressures. He allowed zero pressures. So Matt Farniok is one of those players that I also want to watch. And here in the chat, we have a lot of comments, and thank you for being, of course, participating in the chat. Osa Odizuwa, says Kenny Stanley. Osa has been one of the main players to watch in preseason. I agree. He looked great versus the Houston Texans. And what I wanted to see from him versus Houston, and we mentioned here in the show, was down-to-down consistency. And he provided us with that versus the Texans, no doubt about it. David saying Bradley and I and Cox, and I see Bradley and I, is a common answer on tonight's show, and I understand why. Hardy Knox says Dallas Young, and I think that's a very interesting answer, because even though I believe that the Cowboys should only carry 2 running backs on the roster, this is the game for them to Kenny is on fire on tonight's show in the chat. Kenny I'm not going to mention it. I refuse to do so, Kenny. I'm just kidding, man, but I'm just trying not to laugh out loud on tonight's show. Matt Farniok, come on, Kenny. That was good, though. That one got me, though. That one got me. Hardy Knox, we have not really paid a lot of attention to the running backs behind Dowdle and behind the starters. So I appreciate you, Kenny. Thank you for being on the show, of course. Hardy Knox is going to be an interesting duo to watch, because they're probably going to get a lot of playing time. I don't think that Tony Pollard is going to keep a lot of the reps from them versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, because I think that the Cowboys coaching staff is going to want to figure out whether or not Hardy and Knox deserve a deeper look at their play. Isaac Alarcon looks better, says Kenny, and I agree. I think that his worst game probably came versus the Arizona Cardinals. There were some snaps that I did not like versus the Houston Texans as well, and maybe some bad plays from Isaac, but overall he's played well, in my opinion, and I hope he makes the practice squad without the roster exemption. I want him to be available for the Cowboys to call up at any moment, because we were actually talking about Matt Farniok, and I believe that that's one of the most interesting positions for the Dallas Cowboys, because you have Brandon Knight struggling at guard and at tackle, and you have nothing is guaranteed, in my opinion, behind Connor McGovern in the interior offensive line depth chart. Matt Farniok does not have a spot guaranteed. Brandon Knight does not have a spot either. So those positions, those spots on the roster are up for grabs. And I don't think Alarcon will make the 53-man roster, but I do think that if he stays in the practice squad and the Cowboys suffer any kind of injury during the season, maybe he's called up and maybe he gets some playing time for the Dallas Cowboys at some point. Yeah, that would be amazing for the entire fan base of the Cowboys, and of course, especially for the entire Cowboys fan base in Mexico. Josh Ball, still need to see him, says Kenny, and definitely. And I think we will not see him in a while because he's been dealing with an injury, and I think he's going to make the roster and then put an injury reserve, and then you have to wait 3 weeks in order to activate him. But that's one of the players that I'm the most intrigued about as well. I think Knox could have a good game, says Dallas. We hope he does. What's going on with Chauncey Golston? Will he miss the season? Probably not, but he's going to start in PUP/injured reserve. I do think that. So something happened with the camera. I'm sorry. I don't know. Whoa, what's going on with the camera? We're having a blooper here on tonight's show. Let me see if this works. All right, so I think I unplugged it by accident. Our swing tackle is important, says Todd Cook. It really is, and I don't think that Ty has earned that job entirely, even though maybe we're sleeping on Ty. I was looking at those numbers, and he did not allow but one pressure versus the Houston Texans. So maybe Ty is improving little by little, but what we saw in those first 2 preseason games was not great. But Josh Ball, once he's healthy, he's going to compete for that swing tackle spot right away. Once he can find his way back into that practice squad. Alarcon has looked way better than Knight so far, says Dallas. And I agree. I agree with that comment from Dallas Young. However, I will admit that it probably has a little bit to do as well with the level of competition and who is Isaac playing versus who Brandon is playing. We cannot really confirm that, and that's what sucks about the level of competition argument always. However, that's one thing that I wonder, and I think that the Dallas Cowboys are going to think about, the coaching staff. Isaac is an international player. We can keep him, and he doesn't count against our roster, says Jackie in the chat. He counts if he's called up to the active roster, though. In order to be called up to the active roster, he needs to be... the roster exemption needs to be removed. Actually, for him to be eligible to be called up from the practice squad to the active roster, the tag needs to be removed. The international player tag needs to be removed. And then he has to spend 3 weeks counting toward the practice squad limit in order for him to be eligible to be called up to the 53-man roster. So he counts and he doesn't count. Right now he doesn't. But once the regular season starts, if the Cowboys want to play him on game day, he will have to be he will have to be without that international player tag. Thank you, Abraham, for being here on the show. How does the defense look? Thank you for being here on the show on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime and through Twitter as well. Well, the defense, I don't know what you guys think. The defense looks way younger, and it does look faster than last year, in my opinion. What we've seen at linebacker from Micah Parsons has been really insane, and what we've seen from Osa so far has been very promising. My expectations are not that high for the Cowboys defense. I think a lot of people are hopping in a train that this is going to be a top 15 unit, and listen, they might, but I'll be okay if they break the top 20. And if they become an average defense, I will be more than okay with that. We're going to see some issues with this Cowboys defense. The defensive backfield is not really great. The cornerback room is not really great. I mean, I like what we've seen from Trevin Diggs, but behind Trevin Diggs, I have a lot of concerns. So I'm still not very sold on the defense. And thank you, Daniel, for being here on the show. I really appreciate you tuning into ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Boana been doing a good job, says Kenny. No doubt about it. And we talked about a specific package that we saw from the Cowboys versus the Houston Texans, in which the Cowboys lined up Brent Irvin and they lined up Boana. And I cannot remember who was it. Was it Justin Hamilton plus Randy Gregory? So the Cowboys had 3 defensive tackles on the line of scrimmage, and then they had Michael Parsons lined up on the edge. So that was very interesting as well. So anyways, that's it for me tonight. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Thursday night, and we will see all of you on Sunday night. And of course, you can catch Skywalker Steel tomorrow morning on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime, on ADC Sports Live, of course. And then we will have one final game day for preseason, one final preseason game day versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. And guess what? We will have Overreaction Sunday, because the game is going to take place Sunday morning, and we will be able to overreact at 8 p.m. Central Time here on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, David, Mike, Todd, everyone who's been participating on tonight's show. I really appreciate you. I will see you on Sunday night at ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Thank you, and check out adcsportsdallas.com or adcsports.com/Dallas. Thank you.